Welcome to DCF Investigations. Imagine a world that feels safer than the one we know today. A world where the term helicopter parent does not yet exist, where neighbors leave their doors unlocked, and where children run freely in parks, tethered only by the sound of their parents' voices calling them home for dinner. It is 1991 in Victoria, British Columbia. This is a city known for its British charm, its hanging flower baskets, and its isolation from the harder, grittier realities of mainland metropolises. It is a garden city on an island, a place that feels removed from the darkness. But on a crisp Sunday in March, that illusion of safety was shattered in a matter of seconds, creating a void that has remained empty for over 3 decades. We are looking into the disappearance of Michael Dunahee. This is not just a story about a missing child. It is the story of the exact moment a community lost its innocence. It is a narrative of a mystery so profound and a search so exhaustive that it changed the way a nation looks at its own children. Today, we are going to walk through every second of that day, every lead that sparked hope, and every dark corner of the investigation that followed. To understand the magnitude of this loss, we must first look at the family at the center of the storm. Bruce and Crystal Dunahee were a young working-class couple building a life in Victoria. They represented the quintessential young family of the era. They had 2 children, 4-year-old Michael and his infant sister, Caitlin. Michael was a bright, energetic boy. He was 4 years old, a time of life defined by curiosity and a burgeoning sense of independence. He had blonde hair, blue eyes, and a spirit that was described by everyone who knew him as infectious. He loved the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a detail that grounds him in his time, making him relatable to an entire generation of children who grew up in the early 90s. He was not just a name in a police file. He was a little boy who loved cartoons, who loved his family, and who had an entire life waiting for him. Sunday, March 24th, 1991, dawned as a beautiful day in Victoria. It was cool but bright, the kind of early spring day that draws people out of their winter hibernation. Bruce Dunahee was a member of a local touch football league, and they had a game scheduled at the fields adjacent to Blanchard Elementary School. And this was a routine Sunday. It was a family outing. There was nothing ominous about the decision to pack up the car and head to the school grounds. The family arrived at the school around 12:30 in the afternoon. The atmosphere was lively. There were other families there, other players warming up, spectators gathering to watch the match. The field was located near a playground, a common setup for schools, allowing children to play while parents engaged in sports nearby. The proximity suggests safety. If you are standing on the football field, the playground is just there, a stone's throw away. It is not hidden in a dense forest. It is right next to the school building and the street. Upon arrival, Crystal Dunahee was busy attending to baby Caitlin. Bruce was preparing to take the field. Michael, full of the energy of a 4-year-old boy who has been cooped up in a car, asked his mother if he could go over to the playground. It was a request made by millions of children to millions of parents. Crystal said yes, but there was a condition. He had to wait for his daddy to take him over. However, in the chaotic moments of arrival, Michael asked his father if he could go to the playground immediately. Bruce, who was focused on the game logistics, told Michael he could go, but he had to stay close. This is the moment that has been dissected 1,000 times. The playground was merely meters away. It was visible. There were other people around. It was broad daylight. Michael, wearing a blue hooded jacket with red cuffs, Ninja Turtle sneakers, and rugby pants, walked away from his parents toward the play structure. Bruce turned his attention to his cleats or his teammates for a moment. Crystal was managing the baby. It was a lapse of direct eye contact that lasted perhaps seconds, maybe a minute or two. When Bruce looked up to check on his son, the playground was empty of Michael. At first, there was no panic. The human brain does not immediately jump to the worst-case scenario. Bruce assumed Michael was hiding, or perhaps he had wandered just around the corner of the school building. Bruce walked over to the playground. He called Michael's name. He expected a giggle, a rustle in the bushes, or the sight of the blue jacket popping out from behind a slide. There was nothing. He circled the area. He checked the perimeter of the school. The confusion began to curdle into worry. Bruce returned to Crystal and asked if Michael had come back to her. Oh, she said no. Now, the worry turned to fear. The game had not even properly started, but everything stopped. The players on the field, realizing something was wrong, joined the search. Suddenly, you had a grid of able-bodied men and women combing the school grounds, calling out, "Michael! Michael!" The shouts echoed off the school walls and drifted into the nearby residential streets. Minutes ticked by. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. The radius of the search expanded frantically. They checked the washrooms. They checked the nearby bushes. They ran to the road to see if he had wandered into traffic. But Michael Dunahee had simply vanished. It was as if the earth had opened up and swallowed him whole. Police were called at 1:06 p.m. The response was rapid. The Victoria Police Department, realizing the gravity of a missing 4-year-old in a public place, descended on the area. But here is where the geography of the disappearance becomes terrifying. The Blanchard Elementary School is located near major thoroughfares. It is a short drive to the ferry terminal that connects Vancouver Island to the mainland. It is also a short drive to the ferry that connects to the United States, specifically Washington State. If Michael had been taken by someone in a vehicle, the window of opportunity to get him off the island was open, albeit closing fast. The police initiated one of the most comprehensive manhunts in Canadian history. They didn't just look, they swarmed. They went door to door in the surrounding neighborhoods. They stopped cars, they interviewed every single person who was at the football game, and they brought in tracking dogs. The dogs were brought to the spot where Michael was last seen. They picked up a scent, but it was confusing. The scent seemed to end abruptly near the street. This detail is crucial. If a child wanders off, the scent trail usually meanders. It goes to a bush, then a fence, then down a sidewalk. A scent trail that ends abruptly at a curb is the hallmark of an abduction. It suggests that the child was lifted off the ground and placed into a vehicle. As the afternoon turned into evening, the temperature dropped, and a dark cloud settled over Victoria. The carefree Sunday was over. The reality was setting in. Michael was not lost. He was taken. The investigation that followed was nothing short of massive. The Victoria Police, eventually assisted by the RCMP, processed thousands of tips. But in 1991, they did not have the surveillance web we have today. There were no Ring doorbells on the houses facing the school. There were no high-definition CCTV cameras covering the parking lot. They had to rely on human memory, which is notoriously fallible. However, witnesses did come forward with pieces of a puzzle. Several people recalled seeing a brown van parked near the school around the time of the disappearance. This became the most enduring image of the investigation. The brown van. It was described as a mid-70s or early 80s model, possibly a Dodge or a Ford, American-made. It was a vehicle that blended in, ubiquitous in that era, often used by tradesmen or campers. Witnesses also described a man. The composite sketch that was eventually released became seared into the collective memory of British Columbia. The suspect was described as a white male, aged 40 to 50 years old. He had sandy or dark brown hair that was thinning. He was of medium build. It was a face that could have been anyone. It could have been a neighbor, a teacher, a shopkeeper. That was the terror of it. The monster didn't look like a monster. The police theorized that this was a crime of opportunity. Predatory abductions by strangers are statistically rare. Most abductions are custodial, carried out by family members. But the Dunahee family was cleared almost immediately. Bruce and Crystal were cooperative, distraught, and clearly victims themselves. This left the terrifying alternative. A stranger saw a beautiful little boy alone for a split second and acted on a dark impulse. The weeks followed with an intensity that is hard to describe. Victoria is a tight-knit community. The city turned into a sea of posters. You could not walk down a street, enter a grocery store, or wait for a bus without seeing Michael's face staring back at you. His school picture, with that innocent half-smile, was everywhere. The community rallied in a way that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. A campaign began involving green ribbons. Green was the color of hope. People tied them to their car antennas, their front porches, their lapels. The entire city was flagged in green, a silent scream for Michael's return. But despite the posters, the ribbons, and the thousands of tips, the trail was cold. There was no clothing found, no ransom note, no credible sightings of the boy after that initial disappearance. Let us delve into the suspects and the theories. Because in a case this old, the theories are as numerous as they are disturbing. The first and most prominent theory is the stranger abduction. The brown van, the man in the sketch. Police followed up on thousands of owners of brown vans in the province. They checked ferry records to see who left the island that afternoon. But the ferry system in 1991 wasn't as digitally tracked as it is today. You could pay cash. You didn't necessarily need to show ID for a domestic trip. If the abductor drove onto a ferry to Vancouver immediately after grabbing Michael, they could have been on the mainland before the police even set up roadblocks. Once on the mainland, if the road opens up to the rest of Canada and the entire United States. Then there's the theory of local predators. Victoria, like any city, had its share of known sex offenders. Police grilled these individuals. They looked for anyone who lacked an alibi for that Sunday afternoon. There was one known offender who lived relatively close to the school. He was scrutinized heavily. His home was searched, but no physical evidence linked him to Michael. In the world of criminal justice, suspicion is not enough. You need proof, and the proof was non-existent. Over the years, false leads have tortured the family. In the early days, there were cruel prank calls, people claiming they had Michael. Psychics offered visions of where the body might be buried. Police, desperate for any lead, often have to follow up on even the most tenuous claims, or waste in precious resources. One particularly compelling lead surfaced years later, involving a man known as the Canuck. In 2009, police in the United States found a man in Milwaukee who confessed to killing a child. During interrogations, authorities looked at his history. He had been in British Columbia in 1991. The timeline seemed to align. Could this be the man? Investigators from Victoria flew down. They interviewed him. They compared his DNA. But ultimately, the link could not be established. It was another dead end. Then there came the sightings. In 2006, reports surfaced of a young man living in the interior of British Columbia who bore a striking resemblance to the age-progressed photos of Michael. By this time, technology had advanced. Forensic artists could take a photo of 4-year-old Michael and simulate what he would look like at 19 or 24. This young man looked like he could be Michael. The hope was that perhaps Michael hadn't been killed. Perhaps he had been stolen and raised by another family, unaware of his true identity. This happens. It is rare, but documented. The young man was tested. The DNA results came back negative. He was not Michael. Another strange twist occurred involving a frantic report from New Jersey. A woman claimed she saw a young boy who looked exactly like Michael in the back seat of a car. This was months after the abduction. The police took it seriously enough to involve the FBI. But again, it led nowhere. The problem with eyewitness sightings of a missing child is that the mind sees what it wants to see. Instead, a blonde boy in a blue jacket becomes Michael Dunahee in the eyes of a well-meaning observer, even if it is just a random child. Let's talk about the forensic excavation. In 2013, a tip came in that was specific enough to warrant a physical search. A house in Victoria, not far from the school, became a crime scene. The tipster claimed that Michael's body might be buried on the property. Police arrived with ground-penetrating radar. They brought in excavators. They dug up the yard. The media descended once again. The Dunahee family held their breath, caught in that terrible limbo between hoping for closure and dreading the confirmation of death. The police sifted through the dirt for days. They found nothing. No bones, no blue jacket, no Ninja Turtle shoes. The hole was filled in, and the case went back to the cold files. We must also consider the psychological profile of the offender. The FBI and RCMP profilers suggest that if this was a stranger abduction, the perpetrator was likely a loner, someone with a history of minor offenses, perhaps socially awkward. They likely acted on impulse. The terrifying reality of this profile is that such people can fly under the radar. They don't necessarily have a criminal record that flags them for violent crimes. They might be the quiet man who lives in a basement suite, who goes to work, pays his taxes, and keeps his dark secrets locked away. Throughout all of this, Bruce and Crystal Dunahee have remained pillars of strength, though their grief is unimaginable. They did something that many parents of missing children do. They refused to move. For years, they stayed in the same house. They kept the same landline phone number. Why? Because of the agonizing hope that one day, Michael might pick up a phone and dial the number he learned as a toddler. They wanted to be there to answer. Crystal Dunahee turned her pain into action. She became a fierce advocate for missing children. She was instrumental in the establishment of Child Find BC. She became the president of the organization. Because of Michael, systems were put in place to alert the public faster. The Amber Alert system, though not in existence in 1991, owes much of its philosophical groundwork in Canada to the advocacy that rose from cases like Michael's. The Dunahee family ensured that Michael's legacy would be the safety of other children. Every year, there is a Michael Dunahee fun run and walk in Victoria. It keeps his face in the public eye. It raises money for child find. It reminds the community that the boy in the blue jacket is still missing. As we analyze this case from the perspective of modern forensics, there is a glimmer of hope. DNA technology has revolutionized cold cases. In 2021, to mark the 30-year anniversary, the Victoria Police launched a dedicated online portal for tips. They released a new age-enhanced sketch of what Michael would look like in his mid-30s. They urged people to look at their own family histories. This is a crucial angle in modern investigations. We have seen cases solved because a relative of a killer uploaded their DNA to a genealogy site like Ancestry or 23andMe. Police are hoping that the person who took Michael, or someone who knows the person who took Michael, might eventually be identified through genetic genealogy. If the abductor left any DNA at the scene, perhaps on a piece of trash, or if the brown van is ever found and tested, there could be a match. However, the challenge remains the lack of physical evidence. Without a body, without a crime scene other than an empty patch of grass, the police are fighting a battle against time and silence. There are also the conspiracy theories, which we must address with a critical eye. Some have suggested a highly organized trafficking ring. While trafficking exists, the abduction of a 4-year-old boy from a public park in Victoria does not fit the typical modus operandi of international syndicates, who often target vulnerable teenagers or children in less scrutinized environments. The risk-to-reward ratio in a crowded park is too high for a professional ring. The randomness of the event points more strongly to a lone actor. Others have speculated about an accidental death and a cover-up, perhaps involving a vehicle in the parking lot backing over the child. But forensics would usually find blood, skid marks, or a witness to the impact. A car accident is loud and messy. A silent disappearance suggests a lure. It suggests someone saying, "Hey, come here, I have a puppy," or "I have candy," or simply grabbing the child and muffling them instantly. The legacy of the Michael Dunahee case is profound. Before March 24, 1991, parents in Victoria let their kids roam. After that date, the leash tightened. The phrase "stranger danger" became a curriculum in schools. Parents stopped leaving their kids in the car to run into the store. They stopped letting them play in the front yard unsupervised. Michael's disappearance marked the end of an era of trust. It taught a generation of Canadians that the boogeyman is real, and he drives a brown van. Today, the investigation remains open. It is one of the largest active missing person investigations in Canada. The file is never closed. Every time a body is found, every time a confession is made in a prison cell anywhere in North America, the investigators cross-reference it with Michael. So, where does that leave us? It leaves us with a 30-something-year-old mystery. Michael Dunahee would be a grown man today. He might have a family of his own. Is it possible he is alive, living under a different name, unaware of the search that has spanned decades? It's unlikely, but not impossible. Is it possible his killer is still out there, walking the streets of Victoria or somewhere else, holding onto a secret that is rotting them from the inside out? That is highly probable. The police believe that someone knows something. It is a cliché in true crime, but it is true. Crimes of this nature are rarely committed in a total vacuum. A wife, a brother, a neighbor. Someone noticed the driver of the brown van acting strangely that day. Someone noticed a man washing the interior of his vehicle with obsessive panic. Someone noticed a sudden change in demeanor. Relationships change over 30 years. Allegiances shift. The police are banking on the fact that someone's conscience has become too heavy to carry. We at DCF Investigations are sharing this story not just to recount a tragedy, but to keep the name Michael Dunahee in the digital ether. Information travels differently now than it did in 1991. A shared video, a podcast listen, a conversation sparked by a memory. These are the tools of modern solving. If you have any information, no matter how insignificant you think it might be, about the disappearance of Michael Dunahee from Blanchard Elementary School on March 24, 1991, please contact the Victoria Police Department or Crime Stoppers. As we close this file for now, look at the face of the child in the thumbnail. Look at the age-progressed photo. The answers are out there, buried in memory or earth. This is DCF Investigations. What do you think happened to Michael Dunahee? Do you believe he was taken by a stranger passing through? Or was it someone local who managed to hide in plain sight for all these years? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Stay vigilant